Welcome back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, what's going on?
And we're going to talk for a couple minutes here about the changing of the seasons. And now, I'm not talking about changing from fall to winter necessarily. This is not a pumpkin spice latte conversation, right?
I'm taking my Uggs out right now. I'll be back to you.
Yeah, Uggs and leggings, right?
Brian doesn't look good in Uggs and leggings.
No, it's not a great look for me. No. But Dan has Uggs. We're way off topic already.
I do. I thought I would never have them, but my father.
They're very comfortable.
They are quite comfortable and warm.
Yeah. And let's be
and
fair.
they're boots.
Yeah.
They're
well, aren't
boots.
all Uggs boots?
Oh, well, they're not those like little half-cut things, you know.
All right.
They're not like slippers.
Yeah.
All right, give us 5 minutes. We'll restart this thing.
We're going to need Aiden to restart this. I'm not going to be able to go out in the
And we're not
field
talking about the
anymore.
leaves changing.
No, not
right?
the
We're not talking
leaves
about the leaves changing, but we are talking about the time of year where we wrap up some of our project. We figure out what projects are going to continue to go through the winter, and we transition to other things that we do seasonally, right?
Right. We have, every season has its own uniqueness. Summertime gets a little slower because people on vacation. Fall gets a little hectic because everybody wants to wrap up before the inclement weather comes. Now that might come November, might come January, might not come at all depending on the year, but there's always kind of a season here between October and November where people really put the pressure to get things done, because even if they've wasted the whole summer not getting the job done, all of a sudden magically in 2 months it's going to go from, half done to 100% done in a very short time frame. And so it creates a scheduling thing and a plan for what we can get done, how we can get it done is so vitally important.
Yeah, and some of it gets a little tricky, right? So, everybody wants to close out their projects before the end of the year. A lot of people have fiscal year ends or calendar year ends, so they're trying to close these projects out. Usually that means our stuff has to get done because we're kind of the beginning and the end for a lot of things. The paving, the concrete, the seating for erosion or for final seating, etc. So, and this isn't always a great time of year to be doing that stuff, right? As the temperatures change, we're coming out of a period where we just got a whole bunch of rain, and that has a big impact on the timing of some of this.
Yeah, really they're looking for two things, right? In essence, and everybody in the business knows that. They're either looking to get their pad or they're looking to get paved. In one way or another, they want to be able to work on what they want to work through the winter, or they want to be buttoned up and protected, whether that be the base layer or the wearing course. They want to be in a better state than they are, and they start to press right now. And some of the things that people don't consider, outside of being in the industry actually doing it, is even like daylight. Like the day gets shorter. So, we had a significant amount of rain, and that's not great for what we do, obviously. But additionally, the problem is it's going to be cloudy. It's only light, for X amount of time. It's considerably, it's not getting dark at 8:30 at night. It's getting dark, now 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's already dark. We're getting dark, and it stays dark later in the morning. So you have less daylight to dry it. You have less temperature to dry it. So it becomes trickier and trickier. And managing the sites is really important. But the most important thing is managing your relationship with the owner, the GC, whoever we're working for, so that they have a realistic expectation of what we can get done and the duration it's going to take us. Because if you need us to dry out a site in July, or you need us to dry out a site in the middle of October, that is a completely different animal.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit. So, and that's kind of what this conversation is about. As we get to the end of our normal season, what are those conversations like to help our clients and our GCs and our and owners get to a point where they're comfortable and we've got a plan in place and we know how to execute it to the best of the allowable conditions?
There's some of the most difficult discussions, honestly, because it's a very simple discussion in terms of explaining to them all these factors that are impacting us and making it difficult for us to get to the point they want to.
They don't care.
But at the end of the day, not even because they don't care, but not because they don't care, they still need to get there. So in other words, what we have to do is figure out how do we do that? What gives us the best shot at doing that without costing ourselves extra money, making rework, or making a mess. What comes to mind is one job. It's a couple years ago. It was a little later in the season, and they wanted it paved. I think it was one of the banks in Westchester, and they wanted it paved, and it was going to snow. It was a bad idea for a number of reasons. It was a bad idea because it was going to snow. It was a bad idea because it was already wet and partially frozen. It was a bad idea because the guys were going to have to work in snow after that. So like from a manpower standpoint, it wasn't good. From a condition standpoint, it wasn't good. And instead of taking an unpopular stand, which would have probably put us not in very good relationship with the client, we instead paved it, which put us in a worse relationship with the client, because then when we were done, they were like, this is a big mess. It was like, well, that's why we said we weren't going to do it. And so it's something I think that we have been better at over the last, 12 to 18 months after that incident, is realizing we have to deliver. Part of what our clients is paying for is for us to be the expert and us to say, this is how you're going to do it. This is how it's going to get done. And if nothing else, making them physically sign off on something that says it's a bad idea. And most times you're trying to protect yourself when you do that. But in this instance, that's the secondary thing. The primary thing is if someone sees it in writing that the person they are paying to be an expert says, this is a bad idea, here's why, and here's what could happen. And if you're okay with that and want to pay more money to get it undone than you can, then that's going to give them pause. As a homeowner, you'd understand that. If you wanted to get something done and the contractor you're paying gave you a sheet that said, I'll do this because you're telling me to, but it's a bad idea and it's going to cost you more money to redo it later, you'd be less quick to do it just because you want to.
Yeah. And some of it, we want to provide a high quality product. That's part of who we are, right? We talk about enduring infrastructure, doing something worth putting your name on. And for our client's sake, for our sake, no one is interested in doing something for the sake of just getting it done and having it be a bad product.
I was just gonna say it's a loss for everybody, and that's the sad part about it is, we understand schedules are out there. We understand, in the beginning of schedule, we have a couple projects we've had them over the years where it's, yes, this is the schedule, and then things change and the schedule never changed and they still want to get things done. And it's, we can communicate that in a professional manner and make sure that we are alerting them to how field conditions affect our ability to get things done. So you said about that job, so there's another story way back in the day, Superstorm Sandy. Client wanted to open a facility up that we were working on, and they wanted us to pave like 2 days after Superstorm Sandy came through. And Superstorm Sandy brought a lot of rain to our area. We didn't get the damage that New Jersey and stuff did, but we got a lot of rain. So we provided them a letter, said, hey, in our professional opinion, this is not a good idea. Please sign here that you're accepting responsibility. So the person on site signed the responsibility. And then halfway through, he's like, well, it's looking pretty good. Can I have that letter back? Nope. A year later, the client calls up and said, hey, you're, a warranty issue. The paving's not holding up. And I was like, we have this letter that, your people authorized. Oh, we never saw that. We'll call you back. And it was there. It was protecting us. But we can tell them our professional opinion and they don't have to agree with it. But then that we have to document and explain to them that they're taking certain responsibilities on. If they're not going to listen to our years of experience in doing this work and what's best for it, there has to be a transfer of that liability to them if they really still have dates that they want to keep. And, we always want to, from the start of a job, you always want to keep the dates. That's always important because maybe a client's going to be moving into the building or whatever. But unfortunately, we have unforeseen weather. Right now we have material delays, all this kind of stuff that has to be accounted for as you move forward on a project.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And the thing we always try and do is be transparent. Like we try and be upfront, transparent. We try and be out in front of it and say, hey, here's what's coming. We need to come up with an adjustment. We need to come up with a plan to accommodate this. And it is, we're trying to get the client to their goal, right? But it doesn't always go the way it looked the day one on the Gantt chart.
Well, the other thing that is important is that part of that letter or that transfer of liability is also for our team to be able to understand, because sometimes you get frustrated because you're trying to help your client out. You're trying to make it the best for them, and they just won't listen or don't want to listen to your professional, right?
Whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you have to be able to be like, hey, we're doing it. at their behest. We're going to still do the best we can because, the fall time can get stressful because usually, Dan said, shorter days, you be as, punctual. You got to fit everything you can into a shorter amount of time. They want you to work odd hours, maybe sometimes to try and fit things in. So it can get a little bit more challenging in the field. And so part of that is just making sure that you're still doing the best you can. If you're managing a job, you're relaying what the information is and letting the client make that decision. Unfortunately, nowadays you have to get it in writing, but just giving them those parameters that you can work within, and then just still going out and getting it done as needed.
You know what I think? You know what else I think is relevant when we talk about this kind of stuff is the actual, the guys in the field. So there's a couple things. When you have good weather on those days, we need to work. You know what I mean? Like we need to work 10, 11 hours on those days because you don't know what you're going to have in a week. And we want to make sure everybody, all of us have based our lifestyles on how much we make and on anticipating you're going to make 40, 50, 55, depending on the guy, hours a week. So when you have a good day, you need to be able to stay there and work, get things done because you might not get the next day. And then additionally, you need to take care of the equipment. That's something that sort of in the summer, other than air conditioning and that sort of thing, you get to really like take it for granted. But I mean, you want to slow yourself down as it starts to get colder, go ahead and leave tracks all muddy and they freeze on you. You know what I mean? Or go ahead and don't put any additive in and the fuel freezes up on you, gels up. You know what I mean? Like you can stop yourself dead in your tracks because you just didn't take 5 minutes to do something the day before, and some of the guys are really good and some of the guys are okay at it and could do better. But it's one of those things, it's not all about the client. There's also times where we need to own what it takes to do the work, and part of that is we just think that we're just going to get to this giant piece of equipment and turn the key and it's going to go and it's going to do what it's supposed to do all day. And, that piece is run for 1,800 hours already this year. You know what I mean? And it ran when it was cold in the start. It ran through the rain in the spring. It ran through the hot in the summer. Now it's coming into winter. If you don't take care of your equipment and it stops, this is the time of year that equipment starts breaking. You know what I mean? It just is because you've run it hard all year. And if it's not taken care of, that's when you start to see really things go and things break down. And then now you're really behind the eight ball because you already had weather against you. So I want to make sure I put that out there as well, is we got to make sure we do everything we can to put ourselves in a position that the equipment can run. I saw one of our competitors as a thing, they claim 98% uptime, so versus we always hear the term downtime, but their claim is that their service department is so solid that 98% of the time that equipment's on site, it's up and running. So it's something to think about. You know what I mean? Is you don't want to cost yourself downtime, especially this time of year.
Yeah, because you lose 2 hours in the morning, you got to stay 2 hours later, and you got something planned with your family. You want to try and get as much done during those work hours that you can, so that keeps the job moving forward. You use the best weather we have available to us. Client happy. It makes the day much less challenging and less stressful if you can just get done when you need to, when you have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. And let's talk about our team, because the team plays a big role, right? So as we make these plans, the communication to the team is important. They have to understand the time constraints we're under and what's expected of them. As these seasons change, you gives us some time to sort of readdress things that we haven't maybe talked about in 12 months since last fall, last winter, going into these seasons.
Yeah, and I think that you have like JD and Scott and Gary, who all really like when you get to these transitions to the periods where we got to close something out, and it can be time of year or it can just be project. It doesn't have to be year. Doesn't have to be calendar driven. It can be project driven that you're at that point in the project. That's where we really need the general super type role. The guys that are trying to look bigger picture and look where we're going, to really communicate with the foreman and the superintendents on site and make sure that we're all on the same page of what we have to do, what equipment you need, how long it's going to take, how many days you think you have, all those things. Because if you don't have a plan, you're definitely going to fail. You know what I mean? You can't just aimlessly say, well, we're going to get to paving. There was a story, I forget in what book that we read it was, but it was saying basically that if you wanted to sell something and sell $1 million of something, you could break it down. The best way to do it is break it all the way down and say, okay, if I if it takes, 30% of my calls are successful and the average call is this, you could figure out how many calls you need to make a day in order to get to $1 million. You're not just going to get to $1 million because you said, I'd like to get to $1 million. And that is very true of our industry. You are not going to get paving by December 15th by just saying we're going to pave by December 15th. Like, if that's your plan, you're not paving. You have to have a plan for what you have to do today and tomorrow and next week and next month, and then manage where you are. And you're not always going to be at the right day, because you're going to have weather, you're going to have breakdowns, you're going to have issues, you're going to have things come up. But if you know where you are, then you can figure out how to make up that time and try to keep yourself as close to that schedule as possible. It's why schedules are important. It's one of those things because it gives you a marker. You know where you are. Even when you're behind, at least you know.
Yeah. And revisiting the schedule, right? The planning and the prep, making sure, like you said, you've got the right things in the right places at the right times so that we're not slowing ourselves down.
Right. A schedule is a living organism. It's, you set it and then you have to adjust it and adjust it again, adjust it again. Now, the end target is still going to be the same, but how you get there might have to be altered based on weather, material, whatever it is. It's just, it has to all be added in as the process goes forward. And, guys need to be dressed warm because they might be outside, all the basic safety features that are kind of common sense, but at the same time, it's just, make sure you bring the proper clothes to work, yada, 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 just because of, you might have to go out and do something that you're maybe be in the machine most of the day, but in order to help the team finish up a job at the end of the day, you might have to be out and help them for an hour or something. You just, when this is the season, I laugh about that the back of my pickup truck gets about 6 inches high of clothes because you go out in the morning, you have to wear your sweatshirt, and then middle of the day it gets warm enough and you throw it in the truck. And then the next morning you go out and you realize your sweatshirt was in the truck, so you grab a different one. And all of a sudden, every end of the weekend, you have to go clean out because the weather is vacillating between cold and warm every day. So you really have to prepare for that because if you don't know what it's going to be at 7 a.m. versus lunch.
Yeah, Brian and I actually were talking about this the other day as it relates to sports with the kids. And Brian was saying you're getting to this time of year where everybody's playing their tournaments and doing everything, and you go to a tournament and your first game it's 37 degrees, and then your second game it's 80 degrees, and then your third game it's pouring, and you have to bring enough clothes for every season when you're in spring and fall in the Northeast, and that's just sort of the way it is. Another sign of changing seasons at Berg Construction when you're in the office proper around is snow equipment. I don't know if you've been noticing, but every day you come, it's much like Ford's describing the sweatshirts, only it's pushers, it's machines. Every day there's another machine sitting here. And we had Chris joined us over the summer. Chris is, mechanic. And Chris has been just put right into the fire with his responsibilities have been, get all the snow equipment to where it can be that when our calendar hits that day, when we don't know when it's going to snow, but when it happens, that, 80, 100 guys can go get in a machine, turn a key on a machine that nobody's used since the spring, and the machine starts and does what it's supposed to do. Now, inevitably, that doesn't happen. We all know what happens that first time
That'd
you
be
turn
perfect,
the key.
right?
But in a perfect world, and every year we try to be better. And I genuinely feel good about it this year. You know what I mean? I've seen Chris out there taking apart machines, and he's just shaking his head. And I've said it to him a few times, this is a rough way to start. You come in and you see a picture, you see the shiny 290 that's brand new, and you're going to be doing service on it. And then next thing you know, you got a 5-year-old Kubota that's more rust than it is machine. It's because salt is brutal on these machines, and he's trying to fix wiring and everything else. But it's one of those, that's definitely a sign of the season here. It's not about seeing the snow, but
about seeing the
it's about seeing the planning that we get. Becca's starting to come in now and make sure that she can allocate okay, where is everything going to be? We had Tom on the side loves to weld things and create things. I think if he could do anything, if Tom could go back in time and have a job, he would be like a blacksmith. You know what I mean? And in 1800s or 1700s or something, where he's just making things all day. He made some racks out there. And you probably saw him. I know Ford saw him. There's people are looking at him. And it looks like Transformers out there. He's just building things. There's a loader thing that he turned into a rack to hold a hammer. But he built these racks. It's been how many years, Ford, have we been trying to bring snow equipment down, and we have yet to figure out a good way where it gets down there and it doesn't get broken what was already fixed and the wrong pieces all over the place. Because each of these little, toy sidewalk machines has 3 to 5 pieces that go with it. Depending on what snow you get, you'd need a different thing. And we think it's all right. And then you got to hook it up and you got that equipment, you got this machine, but that's not the right piece. It's over there. So he built these racks that we think we can transport them all at once. We'll see if this actually works, but he's been Frankenstein building things for a few weeks now.
It's a little stress therapy for him.
I was just going to say, like I'm not involved in a lot of the snow prep, but one of the things for me, a gauge typically as to whether or not it's going well is Tom. Tom's stress level, anxiety level when he's in and out of the office, around the yard. When Tom's like calm, it feels like we're in a good spot. And I know it's only October here, but so far it feels
early,
like,
but he is calm.
so it feels like Tom's okay. So
for Tom. Tom for Tom.
Well, but I mean, hey, we've had other years where it's December 15th and the storm's coming the next day and we're still welding on things because, we got too busy doing something else. And, that's the thing of better planning and trying to get it done at the right time so that when we do need to perform, everything is in its proper place.
That's the other tough thing. We didn't get into this a whole lot when we're talking about the transfer of seasons here. But here in the Northeast, we're in an area where it doesn't typically get so bad that we shut down all of our work, right? And so now we're trying to figure out how to do some normal work, some seasonal work, with some of the same equipment and some totally different equipment. Keep people in the right frame of mind, health, work-life balance, and it does get a little chaotic.
I got a funny story, and I'm going to ask you before I start the story, Ford. You just shake your head. If there's no way Carol will listen to a podcast, then I will tell the Tom story. There's no way she's going to listen, right? So I'll get to the Tom story. But it actually makes me think of Frank Trago. So Frank does a lot of different things. He does demo. He does some stuff for us. But when we get into a pinch in snow and I need stuff moved, Frank's somebody who may have hours left and can go pick up stuff and knows where our stuff is, knows how to move everything, knows where he's going, knows the area. So last year we were at Longwood, we're already at Longwood. And I said to Frank, can you pick up? I said, Frankie, can you go get this machine? And he said, yeah, I'll go get it. So I think it was the Wheeler. I think it was 930 and we needed it because of the Metal Plus. And so Frank said he felt like he was on one of the shows when you do the repo on the car. He said, because I think it was Paul was in the wheel loader.
He was using it.
And he got out to go to the Porta-John. And he came back out of the Porta-John and the machine, and it was on there, and he was ratcheting it down. And he was like, where are you going with that? That's my machine. He said, Dan sent me to get it. So Frankie said, he said it felt like a repo. He said, I literally took the machine. He threw Paulie his keys after it was locked up.
Right.
Like he jumped in it, put it on the truck, and it was gone. Paulie's looking around like, how am I supposed to work here? But to Ford's point, like I was trying to walk a line. That was late in the day. It was like 3:30. It was like, sorry, but we need that machine. It's one of those things, but that's where you end up, is you end up juggling machines and, you have a few backhoes that you can drive on the road with plates and you end up, can you jump that one from here to there? And it becomes a lot when you start to do that. In a quick, funny Tom story that made me think about it with Paul and Brian is Tom loves those pumpkin whoopie pies, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're like his favorite thing, especially from Achenbach's, which he doesn't normally get to because it's a little bit out of the way. So I was out there the other day and I got one. I saw him, so I got Tom one and I brought it back. And I went to walk it out. I told Ford, and I think I told you the story. So I went to walk it out. And Joe Stauffer is who I think of, but I went to walk it out. And as I walked out with the whoopie pie, I realized that Carol was over there. So I put the whoopie pie behind my back. It was like I was a kid, trying to sneak a snack
trying to sneak it.
Yeah. And so I walked over and I was like, Tom, I got you a whoopie pie that you like. And he looked over at Carol and I was like, he's like, you're an enabler. And I was like, Tom, you love whoopie pies. And he was like, he just looked at Carol and then I was like, I just left the whoopie pie there. It's not there now. So
okay, someone took it.
It probably got thrown away and Tom definitely didn't eat it. But
in all likelihood,
in all likelihood, that's probably what happened.
No need for sugar.
No. Well, when you go like he does, I mean,
He was I think if you're going to weld for 8 hours a day, you can have a whoopie pie. I don't know if there's a correlation to that.
I know. We're not going to get into like a diet structure here conversation because but I do feel like I do something good. Like I go to the gym, right? Maybe I could have a cheesesteak for lunch. So
yeah. Well,
Nooses on the phone. Let's go.
Yeah.
But Brian is the key here is he also eats coconut donuts.
Yeah,
way off the rails.
All right, way off the rails.
Way off the rails. But did you know that coconut donuts or apple in a pinch, that's a healthy snack?
Yeah. So if you're gonna eat something,
there's fruit on there. What are you talking about?
Yeah, right. You choose the one that's got the healthy ingredients in addition to all the bad ingredients. But yeah. So the toasted coconut donut, it's definitely healthier than the rest of the donuts.
So if I get the cheesesteak with the onions and mushrooms on there, then it's better than regular cheesesteak because at least I'm putting good stuff
for
on
sure.
there.
Absolutely.
I do that
I
sometimes.
learned something today. All right, I'm going home. I learned for something today.
I do that sometimes. I even put I'll put spinach on a hoagie, like in addition to just like lettuce, because I don't do tomatoes. But in addition to lettuce, I'll be like, well, you can put some spinach in there. But really, I'm just trying to figure out a way to justify eating a very unhealthy sandwich.
the like 8 ounces of prosciutto I have on that thing. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's another thing with changing the seasons is that I know my health definitely goes down because when you're working very random hours and the only places that are open 24 hours a day make things that are not, they don't make a lot of salads at 2 a.m. and you probably don't want one anyways because you want something warm to eat. And the amount of gallons of coffee too. So it's kind of one of those things that winter work does definitely affect what you eat. That's for sure.
Brian and I talk about this, that I'm like the one person this doesn't happen to in general. I mean, like I do eat unhealthy at times and I used to eat worse.
You used to just live on 5-hour energies too.
Right. See, I don't like the summer is dangerous for me because, just there's so many baked goods that I could potentially eat at bakeries that I'm near. But in the winter, like I walk into Wawa and I'm like, there's not even anything. You get so sick of it, like everybody loves Wawa. But,
sure. Right.
I mean, when you just go to Wawa constantly, you just get sick of it. And I walk into Wawa and then I walk out and I don't even buy anything. Maybe a 5-hour energy.
So it's fewer calories.
You got to buy them by the
And he got steps in walking through the store trying to find something to eat.
You didn't make a nutritious decision, but you made a
5-hour energy. Ford knows I buy them by the case in the winter. Like you can get like the 12-pack. They fit right in the center console nicely.
Yeah, I don't
test how many hours it is. You open up a side door to his truck and see how many are on the floor over there.
We gotta get this on the doctor's on the doctor's notes.
I don't think Donaldson would approve.
So,
no.
I thought you were trying to say get this back on the rails. I'm like,
no,
we're way off.
No, it's too late for that.
It's too late for that. But guys, I mean, at the end of the day, we're changing seasons. We want to prepare so that we're ready for snow, so that we're ready for the GC that's going to say, I got to pave today, so that we're ready for the GC that says, you got to have that pad to me. And we can do it in a way that's not going to beat up the guys or the equipment too bad. And we can put a good finished product out there. And it's not going to happen if you don't plan. I mean, we're already in October. If we don't have good plans in September.
And hunting season's coming too.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Ford's trying to take us off the rails again. It isn't even me this time.
Just another thing that's in the scheduling that creates an issue.
You're just sitting over here lobbing these grenades into the conversation.
That is true, though. Ford is correct. Like, it's one of the things that we've had to consider is that, that first week of December, historically, GCs need us to get stuff done. You're in the last 14 to 20 days of usable weather that you can do certain things. Plants are going to close, but, a significant part of our team goes hunting after Thanksgiving, first week of December. So it's something you got to plan for is how are we going to manage that?
That's a great place to wrap it up. Thanks again, folks, for joining us. We hope to have you again on another podcast in the future.